Welcome to DemoConf, everyone. My name is Megan McMahon, she, her. I will be attempting to manage the slide deck and videos. Bear with me. And we have Nikki here, who is going to be our MC for the day. Nikki, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi all. Welcome to Demo Comp, both to prospective students, Mod Zero students, current students, and alum. Yes, I am going to help out and kind of step into some shoes for Jeff today. So hopefully I do an okay job and MC. But super excited to have you all here. Excited to see all of these projects. And yeah, Megan, should I get us started?
Um, I think let's go ahead and have the judges introduce themselves first before we jump in. Um,
Perfect.
We've got three amazing judges here with us today. Alana, if we can start with you, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, and then you can pass it on to Priya and then Rob.
Sure. My name is Alana. I'm a former Turing student and instructor. And I was in 1603. Gosh, it's been a long time, but fret not because I was here before it was two programs. And I'm a product of that. And I currently am a software engineer going on 3 years at Peloton.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here. Fun fact, Alana was my back-end Mod 2 instructor, one of them. Good times.
We're all here because of
Priya,
me.
basically, yes. Priya.
Hi, I'm Priya Power. I am a Turing alum as well. I was in the back end program in 2006, and I am currently the founding engineer and engineering manager at Ada Marie. And I have two dogs. And so I'll jump over to Rob.
Hey everyone, I'm Rob Stringer. He, him. I went to Turing as well. I was in the backend program, 1903. Fun fact about me is that Megan was my backend Mod 2 instructor. So, yeah, glad to be here last minute.
It comes full circle. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Nikki, I think I'll pass it over to you.
Okay. So yeah, if you haven't been to a demo camp before, we're gonna get started with the first project, play through the video, and then each of the judges who you just met are going to get the chance to ask a question. If you have a burning question, drop it into the chat. I'll try to monitor, and if we have some extra time, I'll ask some audience questions as well. So let's get started with the first project, Spill.
Oh man, it was already ready. Yes. So good at this.
Today, I'll be introducing you to Spilled. This is a Mod 3 Stretch Tech project. Group consisted of Taylor Phillips, Corey Sanders, myself, Asher Spur, and Ethan Duvall. So this project is designed to provide tea education to a wide range of people, ranging in disability, age, citizenship, etc. So we come to the Spilled website. We start off with this tea education. We give a synopsis with some information as to what makes a tea a tea. We can go through and then see in detail which types of tea there are and more information about them. So say I want to learn more about white tea and what makes it unique. I have all the steps nicely laid out. And then I can go further and look at what are the main types of white tea. Bai Hao Yin Zen is one that I love, and look at the caffeine content, main ingredients, if there are any, origin and tasting notes. So I personally love Bai Hao Yin Zen, so I'm going to go ahead and favorite that. And I'm going to go over to my favorites where I can see a list. We can remove those and say I already know what I'm looking for, but all of our teas and search. And here we have it by Hao Yin Zen.
Our main goal was to utilize TypeScript for its added benefits of static typing, code maintainability, and code quality and scalability. TypeScript was the right choice for Spilled, as we needed to ensure the data being used was of a specific type, which reduced our bugs and improved our application reliability. TypeScript will help with the scalability as it enforces coding standards and best practices. We fetched our data from an open API hosted on Cyclic. While the data was well maintained, there was some data cleanup we needed to do prior to using it. This was done within our component library before setting it to state. The front end is deployed and hosted on Vercel. We chose Vercel due to its ease of use and its auto deployments when PRs are made to our main branch. Looking back on our technologies used, our data could be limiting as it is not currently being added to. We could fetch the data and host our own server if we want to expand on the number of T's stored within our database. This would involve hand-rolling additional T data and could possibly come from our users if we choose to implement a T suggestion form.
Of the future work to be done by the team would be focused on backend architecture and accessibility features. So currently the application utilizes session storage to store T's favorited by the user, since the API we use during development only provides endpoints for reading or get operations. The initial goal would be to develop an API with endpoints for each of the CRUD methods so that we could manage user interactions like adding and deleting favorites, and also for the sake of data persistence by having that information stored by the server. The next step would have considerations for scalability, like including user authentication and implementing a database with seeded T data to use in place of app local variables, for instance. Now, regarding accessibility, as is, the Spilled app features standard measures like considerations for contrast and usability without a pointing device like a mouse or a trackpad. Some additional features in mind to include in future versions of the application would be phonetic spellings and pronunciation audio of the T names, and also providing options to switch to different language translations of the app's content besides American English.
When it came to our process, it was very standard. We made a Trello board to keep everything organized and make tasks to assign to people. And then we used Figma to make a wireframe. When it came to communication, we mainly used Slack and checking the Trello board to see if anybody had left any notes or assigned any people roles to our tasks. And then we ended up meeting once a night to make sure everybody was on the same page in our process. That was really great, and I really enjoyed, was working off of each other's branches until the task was done. That way we have less pull requests and merges to main. So if somebody was able to get partway through a task, we would just pull down from their branch and then keep working. And then once everything was done, then we would make our pull request and merge. A really cool technical problem we ended up coming across was trying to get our page to route home if you refresh. And figuring this out took all four of us trying different ideas. So Corey ended up figuring it out. And it was a very good learning experience. And I ended up using this in other projects as well. Our process felt amazing to work with and very easy to follow. It turned out great because of it.
Awesome. Great job, Spilled. I always appreciate when there's something tea focused. I feel like coffee drinkers always get all the cool toys. So it's nice to have some towards tea. All right, judges, whenever you are ready, if you just want to raise your hand and we can get some questions for the team. Alana, go for it.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about using TypeScript as the stretch tech, and would love to know a little bit more about the process for learning new things and what you kind of pros and cons you found of TypeScript as you were going through this project.
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. So TypeScript, fortunately, there is a lot of great documentation for TypeScript that you can find. The TypeScript docs themselves, I know that, docs are kind of hit or miss. I feel like the TypeScript docs are a pretty good hit, very readable, very easy to follow. There were also some kind of walkthroughs that we utilized to just get the basics down, and then doing it within the project is kind of the best learning experience as well. So that was very helpful. As far as the second part of your question, kind of pros and cons, the ones that stuck out most to myself was a pro being once you set a data type as a specific type, you kind of can't continue if you're not giving TypeScript that type, which is very nice because you're able to correct the issue there rather than maybe have a bug much later on down the line that you kind of have to sift through your code to figure out. And then the downside that I did notice for at least myself was it kind of broke up a little coding groove that you could get into just because you would have one screen up and you would see the TypeScript error while sometimes you get into that groove with coding and that kind of broke it up. I did speak with some people that said they'll just let those errors pile up to like 15 and 20 and then take care of them afterwards. But I never really tried that out. So those would be the main pro and the main con for myself.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Priya, over to you.
Alrighty. I noticed that y'all had search infrastructure or search bar, and I'm very curious what y'all search looks like behind the scenes.
Corey. Well, the reason I point to Corey is because this was something that we implemented after the initial iteration was completed. Corey did a lot of work on that, but I think Corey can speak more to it. Generally, it's a controlled form. We compare, and I keep pointing to Corey because I want him to make sure to chime in to clarify anything that I don't get just right. But the input value of that search form is compared to the list of all of the T's. And if it's available, it'll filter those things out in real time. If it's not, there's user feedback that says there are no T's to display or that T can't be found. But that's the very like higher level
Yeah.
structure of it.
Yeah. So to chime in, I don't have it pulled up right now, but I'm looking through VS Code right now to see if I can find it to show you. But to touch on to kind of just follow up with what Taylor said, it is a controlled form and just kind of checks after each input. So after each input, it's just going to see if any of the T titles match what has already been input. So this is going to happen after each new character or each removal of a character. And then if there are no characters at all, then it's just going to show all. We did implement this only within our all T's category. So if you go into like Blends or something like that, you will not see that search bar there. But obviously we could extend it to those as well. But that's kind of the functionality and how that works.
And then I just have a quick follow-up. The description is that as the input is going into this controlled form, it filters and queries against the whole list. Is that like hitting that API every single time? Did y'all cache it? Is there like how did y'all handle that?
Yeah, so it's not hitting it. We don't have it, uh, I guess, uh, losing a technical term here, but we don't have it like resetting after each input. So when the page is visited, we are pulling and then going to all T's. That's when we're actually pulling all of the data for all the T's. We have that stored in state, and then we are just searching off of that uh, data. So if the data were to change without the user leaving the page and coming back, then it would just be set to that specific data set. But every time they were to click on a different category, so if they click on blend and then they go back to all T's, it would be another call, but there is no call being made upon search.
Thank you.
We do, I think we want to implement some sort of caching, at least locally, to kind of lessen that load because it's fetching on each new page. And since most of the information is static anyways, storing it locally or caching it in some way would definitely be beneficial to kind of lessen the cost.
Awesome. Thank you, Spill team, for that answer. All right, one more question, Rob.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about the Ciclet, your choice to use Ciclet for the data. Was this did y'all put that data in Cyclic or was this an existing API? I'm curious if there were other endpoints or if you could only um, get all of the T from one endpoint. And then I guess just as a follow-up question, like out of curiosity, and this is just speculation, but what do you think you would do if there were like 100,000 T's or something like that? How would you maybe try to tackle that?
Yes, I will start by answering the first part of that question and then go to one of my peers if they have more to add. But this was an already existing API that was hosted on Cyclic, so we didn't make the choice to have it hosted there. We were doing research to find an API to use that had T data. That was one that we found, and it only had get endpoints. There was one to get all of the T's, and there was another endpoint to get the T's in a categorized list. That was what we had to work with. And then can you remind me of the other two questions? I remember there are some other parts.
That covered the main part. The other question I had is just like hypothetically, if there were 100,000 T's that came from the get endpoint, what like how do you think you would handle that?
I think I can jump in. I think we haven't thought too much about this, about the how this app could expand in the future. But first thought is using some sort of like maybe a CDN again to like for this static information because initially it's not really changing much. We don't have these CRUD actions. We are only having these get options. So yeah, maybe like a CDN or something similar to kind of host this massive amount of information so it's less load on the front end.
Cool, thank you.
And then I do have that code pulled up if you do still would like to see it for the search functionality.
Yeah, do you want to just send me a link to the GitHub?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to just drop in the chat too, that'd be cool. Sure. A bunch of people would want to check that out, Corey. Thanks. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Build Team. Great presentation. Let's move on to the next one, which is platform.
Hello, this is the video showcase of Platform, the social media aggregation app for our capstone project, Mod 4. Platform is consisted of a separated front end and back end. The front end is built in TypeScript and React, and the back end is built on Rails and features a Python microservice, but is mostly written in Ruby. Platform aggregates many different content feeds into one cohesive whole. I can show that off by getting started with the Get Started button. We'll use ZFG as an example here. So this is the creator ZFG. You can see that his YouTube content is being displayed here just in order of recency. If you switch here to the Twitch app, you will see that the same creators Twitch feeds are populated by the Twitch API in exactly the same way, ordered by recency. We have an option to favorite a creator up here in the top right. You can see that if I move over here to saved creators, all of these creators are saved. And if I go ahead and unsave them, you will see that they no longer appear in our saved creators page. We also have a Twitter implementation, which I can show off here. This is the same app running locally. If I go over here to Twitter, this is just, nonsense kind of seed tweets from Mr. Beast. The biggest challenge of working on this application was definitely the interfacing of front end and back end. It was really challenging and fun to just sort of understand how best to work together and how to organize the tasks in a way that made sense. Just trying to make sure that no one has blockers, communicating through blockers that we did encounter, and just kind of really trying to be empathetic to make the work experience pleasant and productive for everybody.
Elevating quality assurance across platforms with Cypress testing. In our project, Cypress serves to ensure that every feature we deploy meets the highest standards of functionality and performance. With its intuitive syntax and powerful capabilities, we've seamlessly integrated Cypress into our development workflow. Our tests in Cypress are not just validations. They're standards of quality meticulously crafted to simulate real user interactions across our application. Ranging from navigation to element interaction, Cypress effortlessly mirrors the user's experience, identifying any inconsistencies along the way. Some challenges that we faced with Cypress testing was the interactions it has with continuous integration, continuous deployment environments. Having to introduce the usage of the syntax Cypress wait due to utilizing CSS fade-in and animation on elements resulted in test failures to how quick the tests were running in the CI environment versus locally. Using CY wait withheld the test within the CI environment from immediately grabbing the element it's expecting to pause an amount of time till the fade-in animation finished, thus allowing the element to be present for the test to continue passing successfully.
Hey, this is Dana. I'm going to talk through favorite and unfavorite saved creators. So in our main app file, we have a state variable for saved creators, which is an array of all of the creators that have been saved by the user. And if you scroll down here, we have two new functions, one for favoriting a creator and one for unfavoriting a creator, which have been passed as props down into the details page, all three of those: saved creators, favorite creator, and unfavorite creator. And then over here on the details page, we have, they come in here as props, and there's a couple of things that happen on this page. So with the use effect, as the page loads, we set the creator based on whatever the creator was clicked by the user. And then the first thing we do is check if that particular creator is favorited. So we do this with this function here, and what happens is we iterate through the saved creators array, and we try to see whether the creator that we're currently viewing is contained within saved creators. If it is, then we set favorited, a new state variable, to true. And if it's not favorited, then we set favorited to false. Based on whether favorited is true or false, will dictate which button is displayed on the page. And then lastly, on click of either of those buttons, if it's already a favorited creator, it will unfavorite that creator and then set favorited to false. Or else, if it's not favorited, it will favorite it and set favorited to true.
One of the main features in this iteration is the implementation of the React testing library. Simply typing in npm run test, you can run all the different React tests that we have for each of our components all at the same time. The reason why we chose to have the React testing library is that it allows you to test a single individual component without loading the entire application. This saves in time for testing, as well as making sure that each individual component is operating and functioning as expected. By simply pressing A here, you can run every single test that we have. Of the total test suites, we have 9, one for each of our components. And of the total tests, all 32 are passing right now.
As part of our backend stretch tech, we decided to dive into the interesting world of caching. We wanted to implement caching because it's a useful skill to be familiar with and allows for faster response times and a better user experience. First, we needed to identify the best place to implement caching, so we integrated an observability tool called Honeycomb. Here's our Honeycomb page. It gives you stats on responses and requests that have been made to your app. Using this, we figured out that our creators, controllers, show, and the index were the longest response times. So we decided to implement caching using those API calls. Go to the code here. Essentially, you just need to enable it in your development and production environment folders right here using built-in Rails functionality. It's going to store it in the cache here. And then we went to our Twitch and YouTube facades. This is the original method that is called here, depending on whether or not it's been called in the last hour. So you basically call rails.cache fetch. It checks to see if something's been cached for the amount of time. If it has, then it uses that. If not, it'll make the original call. And you can see in Postman, so we'll change it to a new one. Send a request here. It's about 982 milliseconds. Send another one, it's down to 50. down to 16. So dramatically reducing it by about 90%. It's pretty sweet.
This is the Twitter scraper that I made. Unfortunately, I was not able to get the database up and running. Well, I did on the local side, but I could not put it up on Heroku because it kept crashing on me and I couldn't fix it. But this is the web scraper that we have where you can input any Twitter ID. This is the Mr. Beast ID. And when you press run, then it will scrape their Twitter webpage. It takes a second. With this, you will have the ID of the tweet ID, because every tweet has an ID and when it was created. And using this ID and the handle, you are able to create the front end Twitter embeds that you see in the front end. Another thing that I want to display is just a funny communication error that we had where the front end was trying to couldn't delete the follow because they were keep trying to input the creator ID instead of the follow ID, and it took like a long time to actually figure out what the disconnect between what the front end people were trying to do and how the back end was operating. And this is just something that we had to do. Not really a big deal. It didn't take that long to fix, but it was just, a funny little communication error that we ended up sorting out.
Awesome. Great job, team. Team platform. Judges, same thing this time. Just raise your hands whenever you are ready. Oh, Rob, right? Ready, real quick. All right. First to Rob.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more. Y'all mentioned CI and CD. I'd love to hear specifically like what sort of CI things you did, and also on the other side, what sort of CD was in place. And yeah, so whoever wants to take that one away.
I can talk about this one if you guys don't mind. So we use Circle CI for, at least initially, the plan was to do CI CD. By the end of our project, we were just doing continuous integration instead of continuous deployment. The original impetus for that was because it was really annoying and difficult to set up continuous deployment, right? And we were just like the integration was working fine. We just really struggled to get the deployment working. I don't know if it's like an error that we were making or just some sort of weird interfacing between Circle CI or and Heroku rather. But we spoke with our instructors, Erin in particular, and she made a pretty strong case for just having continuous integration actually as it's a feature, not a bug. We were a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of deploying directly to production continuously. And in the end, we were like, okay, we'll just use Circle CI to make sure all the tests are running and everything's passing, and every pull request that we make and merge is kind of fits our specifications, and then we'll deploy from there manually so that we all have eyes on it if it breaks horribly. If that
Cool.
answers your question.
Yeah, sorry, but one quick follow-up with like your CI testing. How did y'all handle the API calls in CI? Were you just using a token in there and making them for Cypress?
Yes, that is as far as, well, I should let front end handle that question, but I'm pretty sure that's what they did. If any front enders are in the chat, able to verify. Maybe, maybe not. We'll say that's what we did. I'm pretty sure that's what we did.
All right, we'll move forward with that unless you see anything in the chat. Thanks for that question, Rob. Priya.
Yeah, so I'm seeing these calls to Discord, to YouTube, to Twitter. I think there was one more. And I'm just kind of curious, was there any thought behind privacy regulations or fraud reporting or spam report, et cetera, et cetera? Like when I think about the California laws versus the UK or Germany laws or things of that nature when we're dealing with what people are posting and where they're posting from. Any thoughts in that space?
That question seems kind of broad, but I would say that for like regulations, from my research, as long as everything is like public, as long as you can like get into find the data without logging in, it's legal to get. So yeah, everything's legal.
All right. And one more, Alana.
I believe I heard at the beginning something about a Python microservice, and I didn't hear a lot more after that. So just curious, like which parts of the app are hitting the micro, what is the microservice? Just hearing a little more about that.
Yeah, the microservice is the Python web scraper, where you couldn't. I built a Twitter scraper because there's a Twitter API and there's no free trial for it and it is ridiculously expensive. So instead, I wanted to implement Twitter, so I just made a Twitter scraper, and you can't do it in Python as far as I could find. So instead of making it or you can't do it in Ruby. So instead, I made it in Python, but we built the rest of the project in Ruby. So in order to do that, I built out a Python, the web scraper in Python, and I just made a little API that only did the Twitter scraper. So yeah, then that was able to be called in from the Ruby service, and then the Ruby was able to connect to the Python. So.
Cool. Follow-up question then to that. What about so like how as far as was your API open? Do you need like a key, some sort of access API key for your API, or how does that kind of look for getting access to reading and writing that data?
If someone else wants to answer it, I've answered 2 questions in a row. Someone else can answer it if they want to, but I can still answer this one. I guess
Sorry,
I'll just
can you repeat the question? API specifically for the Twitter or for our other?
Yeah, I'm talking about your little microservice, right? Like your microservice. Like how am I can anybody access your microservice? Do I have to be from your app? Like how am I connecting to your microservice, I guess?
Okay. For the microservice, there wasn't any security. There's security going for, I didn't implement it because I didn't really understand Python that well, so I just kept it like simple. There was security for Ruby where we had like CORS authentication for our Ruby connecting our front end to the back end, but for the Python microservice, there wasn't any security for that one.
Cool, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, judges, for those questions. And platform, you definitely had the most conversation about your background music that I think we've had in a demo comp before. So I think you win most talked about background music so far. So thanks, platform. On to the next project, Destination Banana. Very curious to find out what this one is.
Hello, my name is Ed, and welcome to Destination Banana, an adventure game where the world's bananas have been spirited away by a tribe of mischievous monkeys. Your mission is to navigate through an intricate maze of Wikipedia links, starting from a random article and progressing through connected topics. The ultimate goal? Track down the elusive bananas hidden at the final destination, Banana. The game also features a daily challenge mode, offering new starting points and paths each day to keep the adventure fresh and exciting. Dive into this playful and engaging journey where quick thinking, strategic planning, and a sense of humor are your best tools to win the game and reclaim the stolen bananas. So get ready, set, and chase those bananas.
Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm going to talk about collaboration on this project. Our team is a small group of just 3 front-enders, and the project had a scope of just over a week. This meant organization and teamwork were going to be paramount. Together, from the pre-code planning, we designed a development process that leveraged our combined interests and strengths, including research, logic, creativity, visual art, math, storytelling, and gaming. During each iteration for this project, wide open brainstorming sessions and sandboxing, followed by a period of focused, actionable work, moved the process forward in a creative and organized way. And the willingness of our team to serve the project, as opposed to our individual agendas, allowed us to change course at a moment's notice. As a hallmark example, we had originally called the game WikiLinks and referenced Wikipedia heavily in both brutalist aesthetic and sanitized gameplay. After some mid-development testing and a random arrival at the page banana, we discovered the possibility of a much more joyful experience. Implementing the change involved some refactoring and some rethinking, but with our belief in serving the end goal and with a well-structured, agile development process, the rebuild was mostly pain-free.
Hi, my name is Tom Coney, and throughout the process of creating Destination Banana, our understanding of the nuances of game development evolved significantly. Having never developed a game prior to this, our team quickly realized that this was going to be quite the journey to develop. Starting with the broad range of tools available through NPM as well as React for the basic layout and framework of the application, we leveraged Wikipedia's extensive API capabilities through both Wikipedia and Wikimedia. The process starts with the choice of game mode. If we're looking at a standard game, the first thing that happens is an API request sent to Wikipedia to generate a random title. That response is then taken into our application, and another API request is generated to a different Wikipedia endpoint to generate the article HTML. Then another API request is generated to a third endpoint from Wikipedia to generate the article images. Once the images are returned, all of the information is displayed in the Wikipedia article that you would see in the application. This process is repeated every time that a link is clicked. The final item on the tech stack involves animations. When we initially started developing Destination Banana, we were using a single animation library called GSAP. As we continued development, we learned that GSAP wasn't the best option for our needs. This led to further discovery and eventually the implementation of Framer Motion for full image animation and React Spring for SVG path manipulation. The future of Destination Banana includes refactoring not only to fully replace GSAP with Framer Motion, but to fully refactor the API logic to make the process less resource intensive.
Today, work continues at the Banana Factory. We are dedicated to improving Destination Banana and bringing it to the world. Currently in development are a backend to store user data, as well as algorithmic data storage and tracking to analyze how the game is being played and improve user experience. A mobile version developed in React Native, bringing our daily challenge to the snackable Wordle-averse of morning coffee games. Office Party mode, allowing a user to create custom start and end points for use at team events, birthday parties, and ice cream socials. An exploration into content control, and eventually a potential safe mode for the more reserved user, and the implementation of in-game feedback forms to improve the debugging process. We at Destination Banana believe that the web has nearly unlimited potential for fun experiences. And we believe that fun is not only important, but is a benchmark for healthy living. Research shows that fun improves creativity, softens the rigid edges of the daily grind, and sparks joy. And we at Destination Banana are committed to bringing joy into your hearts and homes. Thank you.
Well, I think you already brought some joy to everyone today just watching that presentation. And yeah, great job on the costumes for sure. So great job, Destination Banana. Let's get into some judging or judging questions. Give him a minute. Quick turnaround here, you know, without Jeff. He has more stories to tell in between, I think. I'll think of one for next time. Priya.
Yeah. First of all, always excited when I see some game development going on. But I am curious. I see a lot of animation and things of that nature, and I'm just kind of curious. I've got a two-part question, both around accessibility. What accessibility was implemented? And then this is a stretch question because I always ask this when I see animations. Did you consider the motion reduced accessibility when it comes to your animations?
Yes, I'll go. We did. I think that the I think that there is a world, and we've been sort of exploring what it would be like to have a basically like an animation free version of this, because I think it's still a functional and fun game. Um, Another piece uh, about accessibility that's particularly challenging with this project is you're getting huge HTML strings from Wikipedia that are just populating inside each of those cards. And that information is coming through in some pretty wild formats. And so trying to get that information to not overcomplicate what's happening with a screen reader was a particular concern. And we're still working on it, but like removing clickable A tags, having those pages not be tabbable so that you're tabbing through endlessly was a project in and of itself. So I'd say it's an ongoing thing that we're definitely aware of, and is a big piece of, I think, sort of like the phase we're at right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate those insights. Rob, over to you.
Yeah, I have some questions about the usage of the Wikipedia API. It seems like a lot of API calls are being made for this game to happen. My first question is, do you have a limit on how many API calls you can make? And if you had a sudden, very large spike in traffic, or a malicious actor that chose to, I don't know, write a script to curl your site 100,000 times, what would happen? And then kind of as a similar follow-up question, what would happen if the Wikipedia API went down?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So there is a limit to the number of API calls you can make to the Wikipedia endpoints, and that is 200 per second. And we actually had a discussion about this. What would happen if we had this huge influx of users? And undoubtedly, that is the first part that would break. If that were the case, if we had that many users, we would have to look at a different sort of infrastructure for the application, right? It wouldn't be utilizing the free version of Wikipedia API calls, or they're using their endpoints. We could then pursue a paid subscription that would allow us more traffic and more calls.
Cool, thanks.
Great, thanks, Tom. And one more, Alana.
Yeah, mine's pretty general, but I just kind of curious, like, how did working on this project change the way you think about like development or projects, how you approach projects, that kind of thing?
I can take the first swing. So I think the first one is the introduction of our stretch tech and our new technologies, and being put in a situation where we have a very limited time frame and we have a lot of unexplored area to traverse, and how you go about strategically planning for that and what you can learn on the other side of that. I think from, at least from my perspective, working with Adam and Tom are fantastic because they're brilliant minds and they're great planners and they're great communicators. So I think that really streamlined the process of, what technologies do we want to work on? How do we go about approaching this? And in the example, or in the video where we showed, we started at Wikipedia or WikiLinks and then moved to Destination Banana. How willing are we to compromise on our original ideas in order to move to something that we hope would be eventually better, which in this case, I believe that it is.
Yeah, and I think to Ed's point about, I think that this being a game, there's planning that has to happen at the beginning, and we did that. But at some point, you kind of need to see the stuff happening on the page and see how it's going to speak to you, and then make adjustments to the code. And I would say one thing that I think is like room for improvement, we're actually working on another project together, which is great. So we're implementing these improvements, is like finding those natural stopping points to say, okay, let's take a step now and refactor, because we've now switched we're going to switch technologies. Like we switched from using GSAP animations to Framer motion because it fit the project better, it fit React better, and to take a real pause to say, all right, let's implement that in what we have before we then step to the next phase. Which there's limitations to being like, this is due in 3 days, and sometimes you can't take all that time. But I think usually that break actually makes the work more efficient.
And I think also sort of on the same theme, I guess, but as Adam said, the three of us are involved in a new project together now. And I think there's no way I'm just speaking for myself here. I think we all sort of have seen the same thing, but the quality of code that we're writing now, or at least trying to make sure that everything is cleaner, or we're doing, that we're not making all these ridiculous API calls willy-nilly, or that we're not writing this spaghetti code in the project that we're actually planning to deploy. I think all of that really had to do with how we went through this project together, and are continuing to go through it after it was after we were done with it in Mod 3. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of spaghetti in this code, and in our next project, we hope to migrate south from Italy towards the Sahara and make it way drier.
And actually,
that feels like a very Turing instructor thing to say. So.
One thing, yeah, I would say on that, what we've implemented in this next project is sort of a sandbox app, like making a sandbox app first, where we really can throw everything out there, try lots of things, play, and then say, this is the thing we're moving forward with. Let's put this into the code that will be this deployed app in a really clean and efficient way. And that feels not only a better way to do it, but also a more soothing way to do it from a development side, for sure.
We're not Cypress testing our sandbox.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you all for those insights. Great to see that you're sticking together for another project.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
What you end up with. And I have to give you a quick shout out, because you did not pop onto my screen until you started speaking. Your plant game is incredible. So yeah, I mean, that very, very impressive. So you got 2 skills there for sure.
Yeah, that wasn't a fake background just for the jungle themed video.
I know, on par. If only you could have just had a monkey there, then we would have really gone next level. But next time, next presentation, just see if you can maybe talk to the local zoo or something about getting a monkey for the day. Okay, great job, Destination Banana. And on to the next project, we have Stackpedia. All right, let's get started with the video.
Hi everyone, my name is David. I am part of the 2311 front-end cohort. Thank you for letting me share my application with you today. This application is called Stackpedia, and the story behind it really comes from my entire experience here at Turing, learning to be a developer who can learn new technologies and adapt to new learning experiences. I think it's been really eye-opening for me seeing how a front-end can work with a back-end and how they interact and the different technologies involved. And so Stackpedia is kind of a resource and a Wikipedia for expert or novice developers to see different technologies and how they interact, or maybe just find a new tech stack to work on for their project. We're greeted by a landing page here where we can explore new technologies. We can learn more about tech stacks. This is broken down into just like a diagram of different categories that can make up a tech stack, and just some more in-depth explanation that you can go into. Going into the individual technologies here, you'll see a list of various technologies. These are just some of the most popular ones I could find, but they're filterable by language, library, framework, and those categories that we saw previously. So here's the languages, for example. If I go to an individual technology, I can see a detailed view about it, just some summary details about creation and creator, use cases and compatibility. And then I think one of the great places to start if you're learning a new technology is to visit the documentation. So you can do that right there. Going to the tech stacks, it's a very similar vibe. We can filter these by front end, full stack, back end. And if we click on one, you'll see a more detailed view that's similar to the technology, whereas this one has kind of potential downsides and benefits, where it's used at in terms of big companies out there maybe. And you can learn more about it through some educational article links here as well. Going into the sign-in functionality, you can sign in using an account that you've created. So you would have to sign up if you didn't already. I've already made an account for front-end at Turing here. And if we just dive into that, you'll see that that opens up some more functionality in terms of viewing favorites. And so I've already made some favorites here for the front-end account here. But if you wanted to add another favorite, then you could just go to the detailed view again, and you'll notice that this button wasn't there as a user or as someone who's not signed in, but now it is, and you can favorite it and see it pop up back in your favorites right there. And so going over some architecture of the project. The front end was deployed through Vercel, and my server and API along with my database are hosted on Adaptable. I guess breaking down the users, tech stacks, techs and stacks, these all interact in a request and response cycle with the server and API I built using Node, Express, and Mongoose, which then gets the data from the Mongo database. Overall, I'd say most of my organization and planning has been conducted through this project board on GitHub, mostly user stories in terms of really fleshing out what my expectations or requirements are. Reflections on the project overall, I would say, consist of maybe some implementations of extensions or improvements to the user experience. And that could be adding a post request where users can add text or stacks. Maybe implementation of an AI or using the OpenAI API to have users be able to customize their own tech stacks and get feedback about, hey, this might work or this might not. Overall, a big challenge in this application was user authentication for me, and that was using JSON Web Tokens. I think I overcame that challenge and came to a solution through extensive research, reaching out to others for insights, and using kind of creative solutions like local storage or hashing passwords. I think in terms of my overall choice of the tech stack, I used the MERN stack in this. I'm really happy with how the data is structured very similarly to JSON in a Mongo database compared to a SQL database, for example. That's all the time I have. Thank you.
Wow, great job, David. Every once in a while, we do get one-person teams, so great job, and got a lot of love in that chat about your landing page, and looks very professional and clean. So, great job, Stackpedia. Let's go over to some of the judge questions. Priya, what do you got, David?
Yeah. So you said that implementing auth was a challenge. And I'm curious, in your research, as you discovered how other people were implementing similar solutions, why go with this version of your solution versus others? Like, what did you learn as you rejected certain research versus accepted certain research?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually went through a lot of options. Obviously, there's Google OAuth, tons of different options out there. With my experience so far at Turing, I've had a lot of experience working with local storage. And I wanted to try to grow in kind of seeing how different things are abstracted away when it comes to authentication of either a username or a password. And so I came across JSON Web Tokens and saw that there are a lot of solutions where you could store, I guess, a user token in local storage in order to validate a user or be able to see if they're logged in or able to access different maybe routes in your API. And so working with things like bcrypt and just like making that hashed token for a user was just an experience that I thought would be really helpful for me to see how things are really working on the back end and then interacting with the front end as well to be able to authenticate a user. And I think with other options, those seem to be more abstracted away. And so I wanted to get my hands, I guess, a little deeper on how everything's working in that regard.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question from Alana.
Yeah. I was thinking, like, I don't know if you've seen that Typing.io website, but it'd be cool to like add that for those specific languages here because you could do like different typing and anyway. But it sounds like you did quite a bit of learning, and wondering kind of how you went about learning. I think I asked this earlier, but like, were you utilizing mentorships? Obviously, you've linked to documentation in your own app, which is really cool. But if you could just talk through the process of learning these new things and how you went about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it depends on situation and circumstance when it comes to learning new things for me. But I'm really grateful for my experience here at Turing because it's taught me kind of to build my developer toolbox. And those can consist of like you said, reading the docs or going to mentorship. I think for this project in particular, it was a lot of extensive research. I had never touched Tailwind CSS before, and so going into the docs was my priority there. I think when it came to the JSON web tokens, I definitely had to go to some mentorship because there's documentation and you can see there are so many different possible solutions for user authentication, but having experienced developers' insights on how you can approach, not, I guess, the best solution, but whatever's achievable for your MVP was important for me.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, and one more, David. We got Rob.
Yeah, just curious, like where the data came from. You might have said that, but I might have missed it. And it seems like a lot of like pros and cons about different technology. And I'm curious if you like considered any like subjectivity in that data or like the absoluteness of it, especially when it comes to like picking a technology, you kind of a lot of times end up getting married to it for years and years, and just wondering if there's any like consideration about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in regards to having like, I guess a couple stretch techs that I worked with, I had never touched Tailwind, as I said, and I had never touched Mongo database before. But I think one of the big things that got me interested in experimenting with the backend was a stretch tech for Mod 3 where a group and I worked with a Postgres SQL database. And so thinking about planning and how my data was structured in this was pretty difficult. I think there is a lot of subjectivity. There's really no right answer in a lot of ways when it comes to working with various technologies. But I mean, overall, I had to handle a lot of it. ChatGPT went into a lot of kind of just like the basic information of creators of technologies or just summaries of them. But as I said before, I think I was really happy with my choice experimenting with MongoDB and how that data is structured because of my experience mainly being in the front end. I think it was just much easier and more simpler for me to access and kind of see the data compared to like a relational database where that was kind of a challenge for me before. And so being able to translate that and then keep my data somewhat consistent in that regard helped me organize all those different technologies and their features. And yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, David, for the presentation and Stackpedia. We are going to move on to our last presentation, and hopefully it's not like a fun way to say this, but T4TP. And please correct me if there's like a, I don't know, better way to say
Hello. So today I'll be presenting my Mod 3 showcase project called T for TP. T for TP is kind of an if you know, you know application. It's designed for trans people to find compatible and safer bathrooms local to them. So when we come to the homepage, we have this landing where we can search a location by town, state, or even a very specific address. We get this lovely little list of locations nearest to us, and we can zoom in on this map to see these pins. So when we go through this list and click on a random location, we'll be able to see more details about it with a zoomed in feature. We can see the unisex status, the accessibility status, the distance, as well as any directions, comments, upvotes, and downvotes that this location might have. We can also go through and filter for accessibility, ADA compliant locations, as well as unisex, and go back to the other feature that I've implemented over the break is a toggle view for mobile viewers, so no features are lost for them, so they can see both the map and the list view if they so choose. My tech stack, I am using JavaScript, HTML, and React for the programmatic side of things. I'm using Cypress to test the UI, and for the design aspects, I'm using Material UI, CSS, and Canva for some pretty things here and there. I am deploying with Vercel and using Git and GitHub for version control. What I'd like to do in the future to improve this application is pull in Google's Places SDK as well as certain APIs that they offer to give the user a more well-rounded experience. That's what some of these gray boxes are placeholders for, because I do plan on doing that as soon as possible. I'd like this to be a one-stop shop for users, so they have all the features that Google has to offer. They don't need to necessarily go to several different apps to gather what they're looking for. One of the most challenging aspects for me during this project was this filter function right here. I started big. I wanted to filter using query parameters. Unfortunately, the time frame in which I needed to complete this project by, I had to scrap this idea and use a standard form with a button. And I do want to revisit this and filter on demand without the need of a button to enhance that user experience a little bit more. In my process of deciding to pull in Material UI, through this learning process, it was the perfect decision for me personally. I considered using Tailwind, maybe Bootstrap, but Material UI ended up being the best option for me because I was building out an application that was maybe less personalized and a bit more standardized. And so Material UI made this really, really easy to build out this professional looking application with a lot less code and a lot less styling. Scalability of this project, I think one of the most difficult things for me was deciding how I wanted to reuse components. This was my first time creating truly reusable components and actually reusing them in React. And so there's a bit of confusion wondering what components need to be reused, how do they need to be reused, and what's the best way to go about that. Myself big for this. Thank you so much for watching this demo, and I hope you enjoy.
Asher, great job. And now the title makes much more sense, T for TP. So I like it. You got a bunch of connections in there. So good job. And another one person demo. So congrats to these powerhouse teams of one person. Let's jump in. I know, and two projects. So a lot of shout outs for you, Asher. Let's jump into some of the judges' questions and start with Alana.
Until you said it out loud though, Nikki, I didn't get the TP part. All right, I'm in now. I like it. I think all of us judges had the same question a little bit, was like, where is this data coming from, and like how can I ensure that I'm like keeping my people who are my users safe in this process as well, like not understanding where the data is coming from.
Yeah, I realize now that my video doesn't mention that at all. I'm using two APIs. The main one that I'm using is refugee restrooms. Unfortunately, there's no way to securely say this bathroom is safe. It's just not possible. Will never be possible. But refugee restrooms, their API is open source. They are struggling at the moment, so the API is lacking in some areas. But they have an even more built out website with those like protections where you can upvote, downvote. So there's also, I don't know what their security looks like. And, you know, there's no way to like gatekeep if a malicious user may come on and upvote something when it's not safe. So unfortunately, there's no way to kind of check that, but I'm using Refugee Restrooms API right now.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And next question from Rob.
Yeah, this was awesome. I'm curious how you like queried the API. Was this like for the map view, like just how from the front end it determines what data to get from the back end, and just how you approach that?
Yeah, Google's API and SDK it's Google, so it is so easy to use for a newbie like myself. Um, Basically, I'm just using a controlled form. I'm grabbing those inputs, and Google's API, their query parameters. I actually found out accidentally that, I mean, obviously it's Google, so they think of every edge case, and one of those edge cases is what if this user doesn't send all of our information? Um, and they allow for that. So initially, like my form looked awful. You know, we had the street number, the street type, the street address, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'm basically just putting that into the query parameters through a function on that search. That search bar is its own component, as well as like the filter below it. Everything is its own component, and it sends that information from those inputs right into that fetch into those parameters, and then gets that back from Google.
And how does that link that to the other API you used? I'm curious how like the data is linked from the.
Oh yes. So I'm using Google initially to get the latitude and longitude. So their geocoding API is how I'm actually getting that like location information for the address they put in. Right now we're just doing address, no like current location. I did think about doing that. I wanted to stay away, keep it ultra simple for right now. So yeah, we're taking in that address, sending it to Google. Google gives us the latitude and longitude, and that is what I send to refugee restrooms to actually get that information back.
Super cool. Thanks.
All right. And one last question, Priya.
Yeah, and it's very possible I missed it in the demo, but I'm kind of curious, where will you take this? What is the future state?
Great question. And right now, unsure completely, to be completely honest, because this API that I'm using is not well maintained. It is open source and there are restrictions with how I can use it. So I can't necessarily use it in the ways that I want to. If I had all the time and the resources in the world, then I would ideally make my own version that I could maintain myself. And I hold myself to very, very high standards. And that's not a diss on refugee restrooms. They may not have the time, energy, resources, etc. But in an ideal world, I would either aid in their efforts or create my own. But for now, it is kind of staying where it is.
Thank you.
Okay, great job, Asher. Okay, so what is going to happen next? In a moment, we are going to open some breakout rooms. Hopefully, Megan is doing that. And if not, it will be one more moment. And they're going to be labeled. So each group, each one of the projects that you just saw has their own breakout room where those teams are going to go. You have the opportunity to jump into any of them, hop around if you have a burning question. You know, the judges got all the questions, but if you have one you want to ask, also, if you want to ask, if you're a prospective student and you want to ask any of our current students questions about Turing or their experience or their projects or how they got there, any question is open. So in a minute, we'll open those breakout rooms. There is going to be one breakout room for the judges. Unless you are a judge, please do not go to that breakout room. That is where the judges are going to deliberate. We're just going to take a few minutes and then we will come back all together as a group and announce our winners. So, Megan, can you confirm that you're doing the breakout room?
Yes, I have the breakout rooms ready.
Thank you so much. Megan to the rescue.
All right, I'm going to open them up. When we shut them down, you'll be given a 30-second countdown. So just a heads up there. All right, I'll open these and we'll see you out there. All right, I think we're all back. So Nikki, take it away.
All right. Yeah. First, I just want to say amazing project, this demo comp. A lot of the beginning of the conversation with the judges was just talking about how difficult this group was. You all brought really great projects to the table. So really appreciate everyone who competed, everyone who's here cheering on your fellow classmates and friends and family. So without further ado, let's announce the winners. We are going to say in second place today, we have the project Spilled. Spilled with second place. Yay. Great job, everyone. And then for our first place winner, we have Stackpedia. And I'm going to throw it over to Rob really quick. He's just going to share a few notes from the judges on why Stackpedia came up in first.
Yeah, it's a very impressive project. I thought the usage of bcrypt and authentication and JWTs is really impressive for backender implement or for a front ender implementing a database. It's a really nice landing page and overall a really good, just an impressive amount to get done from a single person. And so congratulations, David.
Yes, congratulations to everyone who competed today. Really, really, again, amazing projects. Had a lot of deliberation in the judges' room because all of your projects were so great. Congratulations to Spilled and Stackpedia. And with that, I think we wrapped up our demo comp. So thank you all for joining us, especially if you're a zero or prospective student. Really appreciate you coming and seeing some of our projects. And congratulations again to everyone today. And with that, have a great rest of your week. Thanks all.
Thank you, judges.
Yeah, huge thanks to the judges. Thanks for that, David. Thank you for the judges who took all their time out to join us today.